La 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 la.
Hello and thank you for watching my video. This is another in the series looking at the profession guides for Guild Wars 2 in 2015, and today we're going to be looking at the MESMER. Now the MESMER was a profession that came from Guild Wars 1. It was the last profession to be revealed when they were doing the big build up for Guild Wars 2, and it plays very differently to any other class in Guild Wars 2. It also plays very differently to how the profession played in Guild Wars 1, whereas in Guild Wars 1 it was all about interrupts and putting hexes on opponents, and I say unfortunately, but the ArenaNet decided to go with a slightly different system with regards to sort of conditions and boons, as opposed to things like enchantments, conditions, hexes that were in the Guild Wars 1 game. And so they've reworked the MESMER. The MESMER has a very different style of gameplay to anything else in Guild Wars 2. The MESMER has a very interesting, sort of dynamic in the game. I found it one of the harder professions to actually master, and this upcoming video it will explain a little bit about why it's so difficult to master. Okay, so you can see here we're actually on my MESMER. We're in the PvP zone. This is my PvP build, and we're going to talk about what makes the MESMER so unique. So as you can see here, it has these skills, the F skills, the function skills, and each one does something different, and it all relates to destroying clones or illusions, basically clones or phantasms. So what the MESMER does is it creates either a clone or if we look here, we can create clones or we create a phantasm. The phantasm does a lot of damage compared to the clone, which does pretty minimal damage. And the clone the idea is that it actually acts as sort of a distraction. So we can see here we can stealth here. But what we're going to do, I'm going to go into combat and we're going to show off what we can do with the different different aspects. So what we'll do, we'll fire out and then we'll summon two clones. Now you can see there the two clones are exactly identical to us. Okay, they look exactly the same armor, same weapons, everything. But if you look at the damage, they're not actually doing too much damage. They're very low figures. What I'm going to do, I'm going to spawn a Phantasm, and this is a duelist. I'll unload pistols on my foe. So here we go, we're going to unload there, and watch. You'll see there a lot of damage, but the Phantasm is in a different aspect. It's sort of this glowy, sort of ethereal looking character. So that's how you can tell that they're the ones doing damage. Now you see here we've actually got 3 illusions up. This is where you can actually do a lot of damage. So we're going to do Mine Rack, and we're going to press F1. All the clones run towards it. You see the Phantasm, and boom, that's a lot of damage being done. We can get 2 more, and we're going to go run in. You'll see there, and this time they cause confusion and vulnerability. So they do different effects, and they do different things that affect the foe or affect yourself. Interestingly, we actually have this distortion. Distortion means that you can't actually be harmed. It's like the invulnerable aspect that the Guardians have, and so you actually can't be damaged when you're using distortion. However, if in PvP you can't actually capture a point. So there are advantages and disadvantages to distortion, but basically it makes you invulnerable, very good to stomp a foe. So there's some of the benefits. The MESMER, I'm going to swap over to my greatsword. But the MESMER fighting style is to use a lot of these clones and summons, or phantasms to attack and to really cause a lot of damage on your foe, while sort of you can move around. So here we go. We're going to put a Phantasmal Berserker on there. We're going to swap over and then we can unload another. We've got a second Phantasm, and then we're going to stealth. So we're stealthing away. So we're actually hiding, letting all our other, phantasms and clones do the damage. the NPCs taking out the the other our summons, not focusing on us, and we'll press F3. That will stun them. Oh, he blocked it unfortunately, but we'll unload again, and we'll get the clone up. And of course, when you shatter a clone, so when the clone's destroyed, they create different effects on yourself or the enemy. So we can see here. I'm just going to stealth. I wanted to show off. So we've got one because I dodged. So when we dodge, we actually create one. And what we're going to do, press F. I got F4, so we've got distortion. It means that you can't be harmed. And that really does mean that you can get off that stomp pretty quickly. Obviously, the more clones you have, the more stomps you can actually do. Sorry, the more time you're invulnerable. So this is the Mesmer playstyle. It's very, very different to anything else. It's all about creating clones and phantasms that you can then shatter and create different effects dependent upon how you're treated. Now the weapons, let's go through some of the weapons, the skills that we have for the Mesmer. So we have 2 swords, you can dual sword wield swords. You've got this chain that you can use. This Blurred Frenzy, very, very cool because you can evade all attacks, really, really cool. And it's a really cool effect as well. Illusionary Leaps are handy because you can create clone. Same with Illusionary Riposte, and a Phantasm or Phantasmal Swordsman is a nice one to have as well. We have the Great Sword, very, very powerful, particularly for Illusionary Wave, which is sort of a CC skill to push foes back. And this skill 1, very, very strange skill. I don't think it works correctly because I want to show you something. What we're going to do, we're going to target the Mesmer. And what we're going to do, we're well out of range. You can see that red bar at the bottom there. But when we fire, the bolt still shoots out at them. So, particularly in PvP, this is actually really, really a useful skill. Because if they're running around, you can keep firing at them. But you can see where they're going. You can't see them, but you can see where they're going around the map. Or, you know, for example, in Battle of Kylo, if they go underneath the midpoint, you can actually keep firing at them. And see where they're running to, and I think this needs to be fixed because I don't think it's a bit fair for the Mesmer to keep seeing where your foe is, especially if you're running away from a Mesmer. You can see them that they're actually still trying to attack you. So that's one of the interesting notes about the Great Sword. You can use that skill. Phantasmal Berserker, probably the strongest skill that the Mesmer does have. The strongest Phantasm. It does a lot of damage indeed. So let's go back and we'll have on the pistol, as you've seen there earlier, the Phantasmal Duelist, very, very handy indeed, creates a significant amount of damage. The Magic Bullet creates blindness and also daze and stun, really, really good to have. So it actually ricochets as well. So sorry, the first target is stunned, the second is dazed, and the third is blinded. So if you're fighting multiple enemies at once, this really does a lot of damage. Scepter skills. One of the interesting aspects that I've not covered so far is the Mesmer is very good at inflicting confusion. Confusion is very good at really taking out enemies, particularly sort of player enemies rather than NPCs, because NPCs don't use their skills too much. So confusion's pretty wasted on enemies using, like, you know, unless it's a major boss, which would do a lot of skill attacks. But things like, you know, the undead or in Ore, they would very rarely use a significant amount of skills, so confusion's pretty wasted on them. But this, you know, you've got a lot of torment and confusion. The scepter's quite a handy weapon to take with you. The staff one's quite nice to take as well, because you start creating these chaos storms and these area of effect, the AoE skills. The Phantasmal Warlock, another phantasm. You've got this chaos armor that gives you random boons and inflicts random conditions on your foe. And you've got this phase retreat, which I want to demonstrate here. Let me quickly just, I wanted to show you as well. This is the sword 2 skill. Really, really cool, the blurry effect that you get here. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the staff on. So, there's my staff. And what we're going to show you is this skill 2 is very, very handy to have. So you can see where I am now. I'm going to use skill 2, and we teleport backwards. It's really, really cool to evade a lot of enemies. If you're in PvP, you can really sort of confuse your enemy because they will have no clue where you are. That's the skill 5 there. You've got Chaos Armor that, you know, creates this little bubble around you. and generally the stuff's nice, but it isn't as the most offensive strong skill. It does this Warlock, which deals extra damage for unique conditions on your target foe. So if you're in a Zerg, this is extremely powerful. But if you're 1v1 and you're not a condition damage, or you can't create a lot of conditions, it is pretty weak to have. The focus skill and the torch, well, the torch skill, in my opinion, is very, very underpowered. It creates this illusion that, the Phantasmal Mage on the torch that confuses foes, but really isn't that too great. The prestige could be more powerful. You can disappear in a cloud of smoke. It's a blast finisher as well, but generally as a little bit too weak, too long cooldown, and I think they need to rework the prestige. Focus, Temporal Curtain, very, very useful skill indeed. If we swap over and we'll bring out our focus here, we have the Phantasmal Warden, which creates a defensive bubble, so it's very good at sort of deflecting projectiles. And we have Temporal Curtain, a vital one if you're in PvE, you want to move around the world. It's just something that gives you that extra swiftness around the world. You can run around a lot quicker. But generally the focus isn't really needed in PvP. I don't find it too powerful. I prefer using things like I've got my fractal pistol here, rather than the focus. So that's the weapon skills that we have. Obviously, with specializations coming along, I will be talking about those in separate videos. So if you're wondering about those, just keep an eye out. Let's talk about the traits. This is my trait line, so we have 66200. You've seen, I have this build on PvP, in the PvP section. So we have Mind Rack deals more damage, that's quite handy, the amount of damage that you do using that. So the idea is to create lots of clones and shatter them. Deal damage when interrupting a foe. Illusions deal more damage, so it's a flat 15% increase. And I'm just going through here some of these. I have Shattered Concentration, so they remove a boon on hit, so particularly against like Guardians or Elementalists, they're quite impressive. Glamour, I have tried running a Glamour skill, Glamour type Mesmer. I have found it a little bit tricky to try and get that, because Glamour skills, you've got this like null field. If you're in that and you move in and out, you get confusion on it, but it's just a bit underpowered in my opinion. Torch skills, well, I don't use that. This is good for great sword training, but I think that the problem is these sort of elite, the Grandmaster traits, I don't think are that impressive at all. And as we're going to move down, we've got these manipulation skills. Your Phantasms have Fury, so they can do more damage with the critical hits. You get retaliation. You get increased reduced recharge and increased precision for one-handed skills. This is what I like, the desperate decoy when you're trying to create clones. I haven't mentioned about the gain vigor when delivering a critical hit, allowing you to dodge around, inflict vulnerability when you interrupt a foe. Dazing also applies vulnerability and increased damage to foes who are not using a skill. Yeah, I don't really. That's if they're on the run, then you do more damage. Your illusions cause confusion when they're killed, and illusions inflict bleeding on critical hits. Gain regeneration when your health drops below 50%. Your clones apply a random condition when they're killed. You've got this is the pistols, and sort of increased pistol damage, range and reduced recharge, and that's for my illusions as well. So that's why the Phantasm Duelist really can unload a lot of pistol damage in quick succession. I like this one, Deceptive Evasion, because you can dodge around and you create a clone when you evade, and that really allows you to build up a lot of clones that you can then shatter. This is the the chaos the chaos line, boon duration, but again, I don't think that some of these traits really aren't that impressive. Mirror of Anguish is quite good. I run that on my PvE Mesmer. If you want to use, if you're fighting on the Skyhammer map, Mirror of Anguish, very, very good. So if you do get feared, you also fear the Necromancer, so that's quite an interesting trait to take with you. But yeah, generally some of these, they're okay, but I've found the Mesmer, for me, in my opinion, is one of the harder ones to learn very, very well. I'm not going to go into too many of these because, you know, I said if you're going in for the glamours, trying to do a lot of confusion, then some of these will be pretty handy indeed. But generally, I you know, here glamour skills last longer. Most of these you can actually look at yourself. Reduced recharge and phantasm attacks. This is obviously condition damage. So if you're going for Condi spec, then this is one that you want to go into. Dazzling glamours. I mean, again, if you want to create blinds that actually cause confusion, that's one to take with you. Cause confusion when you blind a foe. So there's different aspects that you can take, and I will admit that I fully haven't mastered the Mesmer. It's one of those professions I don't enjoy too much because of it does require. It's a very different style of gameplay. It's not the typical AOE effect. You got to do different things, concentrate a lot more. But you do get these signets that you can use. I just like these because obviously that's a passive heal. That's the way I play. I like having passive heals. Well, you got these reflects. This skill here is probably the most valuable skill available to Mesmers. Portal. Portals are the bread and butter of a Mesmer. If you're a Mesmer and you are in PvE, like sort of PvE with the jumping puzzles, if you're in PvE and there are certain events that take a long time to get to, then you're extremely useful. Particularly when I'm thinking of Rendak in Plains of Ashford. No, the Fields of Ruin. Is it Fields of Ruin? Oh, I'll have to double check that. But anyway, in the Rendak event. And if you think about in World vs. World, for porting in Zergs, and also for porting Golems when they're on the march. And in PvP, you can use portals. You see some of the top-end players very, very good at using portals to move from one point to another. So, generally, portals are a extremely impressive feature. They're a unique feature that's only available to the Mesmer, and it's one of those skills that you really need to know and master well. So we can see here, this is what the portal is. If you're not familiar with the Mesmer, the portal is a fantastic skill that allows you to... So we're running away, okay? I do this a lot on the Battle of Kylo. So we've got this portal, it lasts for a minute, and then we can create an exit portal, and it lasts 10 seconds. So it's a 5,000 range. So here we go, we're going to pop that portal, and boom. We got this use portal, and here we are. So we're on where the other portal is. So this is really handy for moving a lot of people at really far distances very, very quickly indeed. You know, again, for jumping puzzles, you know, Mesmers are fantastic because they can really help, you know, get people where they need to go. And it's one skill that is really, really vital for the Mesmer. It makes the Mesmers a really, really important profession in Guild Wars 2 today. But some of the other skills, we've got Veil, very useful in World vs. World because you create this wall that grants stealth to you and your allies. You'll see it used a lot. Again, we've talked about some of these clones that create a lot of damage. The null field rips all boons from enemies and cures conditions on allies. You've got some more phantasms here. They're not really taken that much. Blink is quite a good one. That's one where you can teleport really quickly. So we'll use Blink right here. So we use it. Quite a good range. You can see here, boing, you know, we're right by the wall now. So it gets you quite quickly to where you want to go. Arcane Thievery, not really used that much. It does have potential, it just needs a shorter cooldown. Mimic, again, copy boons from targeted foe to yourself. That's quite a nice one to have, but I've barely used Mimic. Mantras are very, very useful to get those immediate, you know, spell casts. But I tend generally not to run those because I don't like having to cast them, you know, at the initial casting. And then we have the signets, and they obviously can do different things, but you can modify it how you want. So I wanted to talk to you guys because I think the Mesmer is one of those professions that you need to have played Guild Wars 2 for a while before you learn how to play the Mesmer. It's one of the hardest, if not the hardest profession to understand, to use correctly, and generally it's one of those professions that it's very, very different. You know, there are people that love playing Mesmer, and because they're very, very good at it. So we look at here the elite skills. We've got this time warp. Time warps are very, very effective because it really does allow you to get off a lot of skills quickly because it causes quickness. Massive invisibility is very good for PV, for world versus world, and occasionally PvP because you can give all your allies stealth. It's a large number of targets, 10 for 5 seconds. And then we've got this Moa, and this is really only useful for PvP. Very, very good counter to the Necromancer's elite skill, the Lich Form, because if a Necromancer uses that, you can turn your the Lich Form into a Moa, and that negates all of the Necro damage. Because the Lich Form is a very, very powerful elite skill, and Moa can actually negate that. So this is my rundown for the Mesmer. How have I found Mesmer? Mesmer's, as I said, with the portal skill, it's very, very useful, in dungeons, particularly the Citadel of Flame Path 1, to get past those fireballs that you have to run past. It's very, very good for that. And the Mesmer has a place in Guild Wars 2 today, and I think it's probably something, the profession that really does. It's very, very focused on Guild Wars 2. I'll admit I don't play many other MMOs, but I would consider the Mesmer to be one of the more unique professions that isn't really in any other sort of Guild War, any other MMO. This style of gameplay, creating sort of clones to inflict damage and being able to port. It's a very, very unique profession, and if you watch some of the other YouTubers, particularly if we mention Wooden Potatoes, he was a main Mesmer in Guild Wars 1 because it was all about the interrupts. You could see the skills that they were casting, and you'd interrupt them and cause hexes on them. And ArenaNet had to do something with the Mesmer for Guild Wars 2, and they've done something very, very interesting indeed. And I think it's a fun gameplay. You can have a lot of fun on this. But it does tend to take a little bit of sort of practice to fully master it. By all means, leave me any comments and suggestions and feedback you have regarding the Mesmer, your experiences on the Mesmer. And I just have to say thank you very much for watching my video. See you on the next one.